All right, no problem.
Okay, we just want to say welcome to another episode of Together We Rise, Building Our Nation. And tonight, I think we have one of the most talked about topic, and this have been affecting, I say, many nations, especially the Caribbean, you know. And to really dive into a discussion, we have invited no other than Tanya Dorman, an attorney at law in terms of immigration. Nobody knows the immigration law as much as Tanya do. She's been doing this for quite a while, and she's one of our own, one of our very own. And we say work and integrity. Home of true champion, St. Elizabeth Technical High School. But before we get into the conversation, I'm gonna have Tanya to just introduce herself. Just before I say, Tanya, welcome to Together We Rise. We're happy to have you on here tonight.
Great, thanks for having me, Ian. As you know, I'm an Estes alum. I pretty much grew up here in Hartford, Connecticut, as well as in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. So I'm here. I've been working here doing immigration work since about 1993 professionally. And then in 2002, I started practicing on my own as an attorney. And I not only do immigration law, but I also do state and federal criminal defense work. I do divorces, child custody, real estate, commercial and residential real estate transactions. I'm a settlement agent for that. And I also delve into some estate and probate related matters. My practice areas pretty much funnel into my immigration practice, so it allows me to be uh, effective for clients across the board in various different disciplines.
Wow. You know, I love that introduction. I know a lot of people definitely gonna know even broaden the scope of the question tonight, even though we know it is surrounding immigration. Tanya, so as we know, the US, we have a change of government, and as a matter of fact, change of policies when it in regards to immigration. First, I'll just say, could you just bring us up to date with some of these changes that have been taking place in terms of immigration?
All right, so thanks for asking. So, up until this shift in administration, we pretty much had more of a pro benefits immigration type policy with prior administrations, which means they were open to getting people legal, they were open to prioritizing who they would deport, to not separate families, and to not, affect the economy too much. As you know, immigrants make up a very large um, percentage of our workforce. They do a lot of things that other people don't want to do, like cleaning, working in the meat packing plants, a lot of agricultural workers, laborers for construction, just different things. Immigrants come here and they work wherever there is work. And so in prior administrations, they've benefited from the labor force in that regard. As you know, there was a big push to keep families together. So there was encouragement for folks who would get married and file their documents. The processing times would have been a lot faster. Also, when you're bringing your relatives from foreign countries, it'd be a shorter processing time for them to get to the embassy to be interviewed to come into the country. Now we have more of an enforcement based administration. So it's deport, deport, deport. So you're finding some of our hardest working people are now being deported, even though they're not criminals or have criminal records. As you know, immigrants make up a very small percentage of the criminal community, but the vast majority are here to work hard and to provide for their relatives in back in their home country. So we have new laws that are basically done by executive orders. So we don't have too much congressional laws. We have the Lake and Riley Act, which pretty much authorizes the removal and deportation of just about anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. If you're a green card holder and you've had some run in with the law in terms of criminal activity, you're likely to be on the radar for removal. You're also likely to be on the radar if you're just arrested for domestic violence charges, because domestic violence offenses, they're deportable offenses by themselves, just like drug possession or gun possessions, right? So any crime right now, shoplifting, any simple breach of peace can bring you under the scope for removal if you're a green card holder or just someone here without status. The folks who come over the border, they tend to be the easiest people to be removed because most of them are not eligible for benefits coming over the border without a visa, right? So a lot of them who've been admitted into the country in the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, they've been reporting in, sorry, they've been wearing electronic monitoring and they've been calling in to give their location and what they're doing. So the ICE officers pretty much know where those guys are and where to find them. Sometimes they go in to report, they don't come back out. That's because they're being removed. Um, you have additional persons who may be victims of raids. You know, they go into a factory where they hear that people who are illegal are working or people undocumented um, foreign nationals are working. They'll go and they'll do raids. They'll, search documents and they'll detain and arrest. You have to remember that ICE is a law enforcement component to the Department of Homeland Security, so they can enforce your documents. So if you notice for green card holders, when you get that little paper that has your green card on there, it will tell you that you must have your green cards on your person at all times. Failure to have it could result in a fine. I think it's anywhere between $500 or $1,000, but it's written on that
Wow.
paper. Yes, a lot of people don't even bring the green card on them and they haven't really ever, paid attention to that law. Well, you may want to pay attention to that law now because they're going back to everything that can be enforced under the immigration laws. You have some people now, and I've had people calling me at the office for consultations because they've been given documents when they traveled outside of the United States. They're coming back as green card holders. They're given documents at the airport by Customs and Border Protection, which is another law enforcement agency with the Department of Homeland Security. They're the ones in the airport or the seaports. They're custom and border officers, right? And I'm hearing that they're literally forcing people to sign the immigration form that allows you to abandon your green card. And they will sweeten the pie by giving you a B1, B2 entry that makes you a tourist, right? So after you get your 6 months and you have to leave, then you no longer have a green card to come back in. So my suggestion would be do not sign anything with anybody at the airport. Ask for an attorney, refuse to sign anything, have no discussions, and tell them that you have your rights and you're a green card holder and you're lawfully admitted to the United States. I've had other people tell me that they went out with a green card and when they're coming back in, they're told that they did not obtain their green card lawfully.
Why,
And
why did
so
I just go over there?
they they
Go
didn't
ahead, go
get
ahead.
their yeah, they didn't get their green card lawfully. And so they're trying to revoke the green card from, without admitting them into the United States. I would say if you've had a green card for a very long time, you may want to try to consult with a professional, an attorney, somebody who knows what they're doing to figure out how you could become a naturalized citizen. And if you cannot become a naturalized citizen, how to make sure that you're not a victim of, removal proceedings or unlawful removal proceedings.
Thank you very much, dear Tanya. You see my little baby, she comes in, she wanna take over daddy. So guys, just bear with me, you know. My little
No problem.
baby, she wanna be a part of everything. Say hi. All
Hi.
right. Quick
Yeah.
one,
So
Tanya. While I'm here, I'm gonna have you explain to the people between the green card holders, those that are employment based and marriage based. What's the difference between these? Because we hear that if you're one, this is happening, and if you're the other, then you may have a little leeway.
so marriage based green card applications, they come in various different categories, right? Spouses and children under the age of 21 are considered to be immediate relatives, right? So they're not subject to the count. They're not subject to the quotas on the number of visas to be issued per country. The spouses and children for green card holders, their preference categories, and the preference categories are generally issued visa numbers by the Department of State, while the spouses and children of U.S. citizens are generally issued their statuses with the Department of Homeland Security. And even if they're given a visa from outside through the Department of State, they would be considered immediate relatives. Another category of relatives that would be considered to be an immediate relative would be parents of U.S. citizens. So parents, spouses, and children under 21 years old are immediate relative. They're not subject to a quota. So immediately as you petition for them, they're eligible for a green card. So those guys would be the first to get their green card. Once you get to spouses and children, whether they're married or unmarried with the green card holders, they're now preference, and you have family base one, family base two, A, and B. And they have to wait in line for a number to become current. So that's where you start seeing the backlogs where people are just waiting and waiting and waiting for, you know, their turn to get uh, information from the Department of State National Visa Center so they can process most times through the U.S. embassies outside of the country. Then you have uh, sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. That's like the third preference categories. And then you would have the brothers and sisters to US citizens. That's the last category. And those ones, they all take a lot of time. They all have just like long backlogs. Like if a US citizen's sibling were to file for another one, it's at like a 20 to 25-year wait. Right now, when you look at the Department of State Visa Bulletin, you will see that the category for sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, those are the older than 21-year-olds that would be filed for. Those guys are generally waiting about 7, 8, 9 years for a visa number to become current. The employment base is also a preference category. It's not an immediate relative category. Those guys, they have to go through the Department of Labor to get approval for them to be hired here to work as immigrants with a green card. And again, the processing times for that could take longer than 2 years, 3 years. So it's not immediate. So a person who's like illegal here, like they overstayed their visas or they came over the border, they would not qualify for employment based green card because that is a preference category. You can only get that if you're in current valid immigration status or you're picking it up at an embassy outside of the United States. So there's a difference. And with the employment base, the employer has to do all the paperwork, all the petitioning. Everything is controlled through the employer, not through the employee. There was a time when it used to be done through the employee, but it was plagued with fraud and exploitation of employees. So the government streamlined it over the years to make it less accessible to employees and more controlled by employers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I had a little bit technical difficulty with the Wi-Fi, when I'm over here in Jamaica. So I probably had missed a few, and I hope the audience didn't got disconnected also. But I know you would have definitely shed some light on that situation. So, Tanya, we're gonna ask some quick questions, and these are very important when it comes on to like immigrants. So we know whichever way we got our visa or whatever, but once we get to the US, if we, we say we run off and we start life, but obviously we did not go through the correct process. And say that person had developed and have like created a business, start owning homes and so forth. Now they're now left wondering what could happen in those situations.
All right, great. Let me see if I could answer. First, I want to give a big shout out to my girl Patrice, who's like giving me a heads up. Hi, Patrice. Um, so we know that when we come here and run off, we're breaking the law, right? And so there are rules on how we obtain and retain things like a business, real estate, things like that. Clearly, a lot of people who came through the border or basically overstayed their visas have been able to acquire assets, businesses, cleaning business, trucking business, various types of businesses, and make their money, right? And they now have real estate here. They own homes, they have their cars, they have their businesses, they have money in the bank and investments, right? They have all of that. But they are still without status. That's what you're getting at, right? These guys still don't have the
Yes.
green card. So they're amenable to removal proceedings, right? So my suggestion for those guys would be one, you need to really get in front of your immigration situation and try to get yourself sorted out if you can't. Because some people would be stuck here if they got married and it's determined to be a fraudulent marriage and they're permanently barred from getting a green card, right? Fraud marriages, once you have a fraud finding, you're not going to be able to get a green card and you're really exposed to removal because those fraudulent marriages, one would be a crime subject to 5 years in federal prison or up to 250,000 in fines or both. So some people will get stuck. They got married and they were thinking it's going good, and then by the time the case is adjudicated, you hear, oh, you didn't meet your burden of proof that your marriage is bona fide. The wife left you, or the husband disappeared, and now you're stuck. You can't get anything, right? We have some people in that position, and those people have been here a long time. They work, they have their things. Now they're at risk of removal. So, what is going to happen to all of their money, their asset, their business, and everything? So, the estate planning side of, of the law, I would recommend that they find an attorney who deals with estate planning and figure out if they need to put everything in a trust or they need to have a power of attorney, an individual that they could trust to control and act as an agent over their assets and businesses if they're picked up to be removed. You have to find a way to make sure your assets here can be assets for you if you're out in another country. The other thing that I've seen some of my clients have began to do is some of them they've started to downsize. So if they had 6 trucks, they kind of sell 5 and figure out what to do with their money so they could have something to live off. Some would have shipped stuff back to their countries, like those big tractor trailers and dump trucks and things. They would have shipped some of those back home. Some of them would have sold the houses here, shipped the money, wire the money back, do some kind of investment globally. Because sometimes you could do global and international investments that it doesn't matter where you are, you could still get your money. Make sense?
Yes.
So you really have to get with a financial advisor. You really have to get with an estate attorney to figure out how to preserve your assets or liquidate your assets and acquire new assets in whatever country will allow you or back in your home country. As Jamaicans, we have our CARICOM passport, so we can probably move to any of the other islands to live legally if we follow the procedures there. So You don't necessarily have to live in one spot if you don't want to, but that's another night immigration conversation.
Thank you. All right. So we know we have thousands of immigrants who are there in the U.S. and they're running around playing hide and seek as we speak. Question I want to ask you, which I probably could answer the question, but is there any legal part that okay, this person could take, especially under this administration, to see if they get themselves straight with the law? Is there a process while they're there?
Well, persons who overstay the visas, right? Those guys can always do adjustment of status here if they have a bona fide marriage with a US citizen, or if they're younger than 21 and they have a good step parent relationship, those guys could be petitioned for, right? The ones who are here where they're like, well, my mother filed for me and I'm just waiting, those guys won't be able to get straight. So, depending on how long they're here for, sometimes if you get put in removal proceedings and you go in front of an immigration judge, they may be eligible for what's called relief from removal. And that's going to be limited to maybe cancellation of removal, maybe adjustment of status again, depending on where you are in the process, and maybe the removal of conditions for those guys who would have had the 2 year green card and things don't work out and they're kind of stuck. So the window or the options for relief from removal are very limited. The folks who come over the border, they're generally barred from everything except asylum and withholding of removal. 9 times out of 10, they're not eligible. Most people have a 1 year window to apply for that asylum, so they have to do it as soon as they get here. If more than a year has passed, there's less likelihood for them to get any type of benefit. And the application for withholding and removal in political asylum and withholding under the Vienna Convention Against Torture pretty much is going to require evidence to show that if you're removed from the United States, you're more likely than not to be tortured or persecuted by your government. So a lot of people from Jamaica would have gotten into the crossing the Mexican border thing to come over here thinking that once they get to America, they could just file for asylum and get it. Or they could just say, they're going to kill me in Jamaica and get it. No, it doesn't happen like that. You have to show that it's the Jamaican government or some group that is supported by the government is likely to persecute you or harm you or torture you or kill you based on your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and membership in a particular social group. Most times people will try to fit in under the membership in a particular social group because they say, oh, I could just say that I'm gay and they're trying to kill me in Jamaica and they'll give it to me. Well, no, because the Jamaica has gay rights as well as most other countries, human rights. And you have to remember that the United States government will have investigators through the United States Embassy that's in Jamaica that can tell them boots on the ground what's happening. Are they killing gay people? Is this the situation? So they're abreast of the rules and the laws. So you can't think that they don't know what's going on in Jamaica as it pertains to folks in a particular social group, women fleeing from domestic violence. Crime is everywhere. So you can't say, oh, there's too much crime and violence in Jamaica, that's why I'm coming here. Because we have crime and violence here in America too. Probably even more than there is in Jamaica per capita or per square. So that's why the political asylum application opportunity is very, very limited and only very few people are able to get it.
Wow, wow, wow. So it's an uphill task, if I may say.
It can be, but again, immigration is always fact based and law based. So even though I'm saying this, there may be persons in Jamaica or in the Dominican Republic who are subject to persecution because of their government, but it's not going to be your global statement that you read in the Gleaner that says, oh, they just murdered this person because this person is this way. That person is not you. So whoever's applying, you have to make sure the facts are applying directly to you. And when you make those applications, they want names. They want to identify parties who are persecuting others. So if you're saying the police department is sanctioned by the government and these police officers are going out and killing people and beating people and they want to kill me for whatever reason, you better know that you need the names of those cops, you need everything so that the government too can investigate on their own to build that case to see if you're a liar or if you're eligible or not, you know?
Okay, thank you. So we have covered some good grounds there. So another quick question that somebody shoot over to me is they want to know what are some, I know you went over a few of them, but just to reinforce it, what are some of the most common reason now for someone having their green card canceled or a denial?
So INA Section 212A has a list of offenses, right, that a person can be convicted of that will void out the green card as soon as they go outside of the United States. For example, theft offenses, crimes involving moral turpitude. Like if you are a shoplifter, like a serial shoplifter with 6, 8, 10 shoplifting conviction, and then they go get up to like felony, persistent larceny offender convictions, and you go out with a green card, and you make travel for years and years and years, and no one said anything, but you're likely to be deemed an arriving alien and pretty much put in removal proceedings as such because of your criminal history. So criminal history is a big one. Drugs, unless it's for less than 30 grams of marijuana, which is probably just a little marijuana cigarette, you're at risk of losing the green card once you leave the country. Domestic violence convictions, even the misdemeanor ones, breach of peace, creating a public disturbance, those again can render you inadmissible coming back into the country. Gun offenses, so fraud, like identity theft related, fraud in ID, counterfeit license, those things can get you inadmissible coming back with a green card. Now, I don't want you to get me wrong. If you had these charges before you get the green card, you failed to disclose them, and then you got the green card based on the misrepresentation that you've never been arrested, and then they find out that you were arrested, you could get your green card removed from you because taken because you did not obtain your green card lawfully. It's the same thing with the folks who had like the fraudulent marriages and got the green card. They could go back through and look to see whether or not that marriage was legit or there was any misrepresentation in the application itself. Like, did you leave off a child? Did you fail to disclose that you were previously married and produce your divorce certificate? So you have to look at factual deficiencies in the application, or they can literally revoke the green card upon return. If you're within the United States, it's a lot harder for them to just take the green card because they would have to put you in removal proceedings and prove everything that they want to claim you're removable for. But if you go out, they don't have to do anything. You
Okay.
have to show that you have the right to be let back in. The burden shifts, so it's a harder case when you leave the country because the burden is on you to show that you're eligible to be here, you're eligible to return. You're the one who's gonna have to run around to get those criminal conviction dispositions or the dismissals from the court to show that you were never convicted. The onus will now be on you. And
All right.
I'm sure a lot of us have been in the airport where we see custom officers like literally coming down the hangar to pick people out of the line. That's because they're able to look at your flight manifest and know who's on the aircraft, run a lot of backgrounds on everybody, and pick out who they need to bring in for secondary inspection.
All right. Before I let you take this question from Nadine, since we're on this topic, quickly, because I have a few people, concerned. They're saying that if they traveled outside of the US, say they have their US citizenship and their Jamaican citizenship, meaning they have their Jamaican passport is still active, and they have their US citizenship, but they travel outside of the country on their Jamaican passport and not the US passport. What happened in that case if they're returning? Because we're hearing all these rumors that they can be stopped and it can be taken away.
Well, all right. So the passport is your travel document. Jamaican passport is a Jamaican travel document. So it's not per se an immigration document. The passport is issued by the United States Department of State. The Jamaican passport is issued by PICA, right? When we become naturalized citizens, we all are required to denounce all prince, potentate, there's a list of sovereignty to all other nations. Some of the officers, when folks go for interview, will go as far as to ask you the question that says, well, if the United States were to go to war and they're fighting against Jamaica, would you bear arms to like shoot your Jamaican brother while representing the United States, while being a United States citizen? And I can tell you, every single person who has that citizenship certificate has said yes to that question. Because America says, once you're a naturalized citizen, you do not have dual citizenship because you have to give up your other nationality to accept our citizenship here, right? If you're born here, it's a little different because you didn't give up anything to get anything, right? You're just born here. Jamaica, on the other hand, does not have the dual citizenship restriction because they understand that a lot of the Jamaican born people who are considered Jamaican nationals have migrated and become US citizens. And in doing so, they have denounced your Jamaican citizenship. This is why a lot of the returning residents or US citizens have to now go back to the Jamaican government to apply for that special status as returning residents so that they can function and live like Jamaicans when they come back home. Make sense?
Makes
If
sense?
you leave this country knowing that you're a United States citizen and you're traveling out with a Jamaican passport, in the system that they use to document who goes out and who comes in, you're going to be going out as a Jamaican, which means if something bad should happen to you, the Jamaican government will be responsible for you and not the United States government because you're now traveling as a national of Jamaica. You're not using the document issued to you showing that you're a national or a citizen of the United States. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you go out as a Jamaican and you hand your Jamaican passport to Jamaica customs officers, they may bring you in and swipe you in as a Jamaican. You don't have any designated time to leave. But when you go there as a US citizen, you're a tourist, so they could tell you could leave, within 2 days, 5 days, 6 weeks. But my experience is I've never really seen the Jamaican customs give people less time than they have on their return, you know? And even if
Okay.
you stay longer than what's on your return ticket and you had to extend or stay over, you just buy your ticket and leave within the designated time you want to leave. So I don't see the benefit of going out as Jamaican and then trying to come back in as American. And if that's what's going on, if they really enforce those rules, you're going to find that if you go out as Jamaican, you're Jamaican, you denounce your citizenship and you're out there as Jamaican because you're now saying that I'm a Jamaican and that's after. They could try that with you. Now you have to understand that this administration, in my book, they have people who may or may not follow the law, the letter of the law. Immigration has always been something that's given to people, their statuses their ability to enter the country and stay here, it's always given as a matter of discretion. So if they don't want you here, they could always refuse you at the airport. If they don't want you here for longer than a month, they could tell you that. And if they don't want you here, period, they can exclude you at the airport. So this is why a lot of people go up for the visa to the embassy and they get refused, and another person may go right after with less of everything and they get the visa to travel. Because those things are given as a matter of discretion. So is the green card, always given as a matter of discretion.
Okay,
So
thank you for.
So I see that Nadine is asking if the same process and wait for Canadians working here as for everyone else. Yes. The Canadians are like the Jamaicans, the Mexicans, the Dominican. It's one federal immigration law that covers every nation. So if a Canadian got married to a US citizen to get green card, they're gonna wait the same time as a Mexican or with well let me change that. They're gonna wait the same time as someone who's here who overstayed their visa. If you just come over the border and you overstay from Canada, you're like a Mexican that came over the border and overstayed. Most Canadians will have uh like special privilege, like border crossing cards. You know, if you have a Canadian status, it's imputed. You don't necessarily need a visa to come over here. But I think Mexicans need a visa to come here. So that's the only difference.
Okay, we're gonna put across another question here coming from one of our States family, Patrice.
Says if a person was here as a teenager and had a green card and had an incident with the law, even though it's a closed incident, should they worry about their status now? I would say yes. If they still have the green card, you may want to go back and check the record to see if it's expunged or sealed. Sealed records, depending on what state it is just sealed to the public, not necessarily to law enforcement. So they can go in and pull the records to see that that person had a conviction as a teenager. Also, you have to look at the kind of conviction the teenager had, because sometimes teenagers get convicted of crimes and they're prosecuted as adults. So even though they are a teenager, they have an adult conviction. So you would need to see a professional who can examine the conviction, see whether or not that person is eligible to become a citizen, or that person can find a way to circumvent removal should they be apprehended for removal proceedings. The person, too, as a teenager, can also be a citizen
Don't
because they
worry, I'll
probably could have derived status through their parents. So, for example, if a teenager came here and the teenager was under 18 before their parents became naturalized citizens, the parents were married, that teenager could be a citizen by operation of law. So there's a good possibility too that that person who has a green card who thinks they're just a green card holder could have been a citizen by operation of law the very day they set foot here as a green card holder, or the very day their parent became a naturalized citizen if they were under the 18 at the time. I hope that answers that question for you, Patrice.
Tanya, give me water.
All right, I'll have you answer this question also. How can undocumented immigrants protect themselves legally? Because we know what is happening now, and ICE is raiding and all this stuff. Um, can someone protect themselves legally before this gets to them?
No, undocumented persons are illegal. They have no legal protections other than if they're illegal because they're a victim of persecution from their government. So, illegals, undocumented folks are not really, they're not the people with a lot of options for legal immigration. It depends on how long they've been illegal and if they have ties here, like spouses and children, then they might be able to get relief from removal, you know. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot available for the undocumented people, the ones who come over the border illegally. So you have to remember, those guys just sneak right in. And they're the ones the law really try to exclude. I mean, they have options, but it all requires for them to go back out of the country. For example, they have what's called um, a 212A provisional waiver. That's for the folks who come over the border and have been unlawfully present for more than 180 days. They'd be subject to the 5 year or the 10-year bar for having overstayed visas and come across the border without being detected. You would first have to be petitioned for it, get that approved. Then you have to do the provisional waiver, get that approved, and then do the overseas visa processing that allow you to go outside of the country to come back in. So again, it's really complicated. I think
Very
something is wrong
complicated.
with your I think something is wrong with your recording.
Probably it should be good. But you're hearing me, right?
I am.
All right. The next question. So, worst case scenario now. You
Hmm.
are not legally documented in the US. You got raided, ICE pick you up, and they put you into holding. How long of a process can this be for, into getting you back into Jamaica or say Trinidad, wherever you are in say a Caribbean country?
All right, so that's a good question because nobody knows and you cannot predict because everywhere is different. I mean, you have folks who are picked up in certain areas. They don't really have a detention facility, so now they're gonna hold you somewhere and then send you to Miami, Louisiana, Massachusetts, or someplace very far from home. Then they got to get you in the system with thousands of people who are in those correctional institutions going through the process. We only have so many judges, and most of the deportation hearings are held virtually. So it may take, a couple of weeks. They like to deport, or they like to get the deportation orders quickly so that they're not keeping people at the expense of the government for too long. But you're talking at least several months, 6 months, could even be a full year before your process is over, depending on what you're doing for you to get out. And usually for security reasons, when they're deporting folks, they don't tell people who's on that plane when you're being deported. It's kind of kept confidential till you're literally landed. You're literally in on some tarmac somewhere to be removed from a plane. That's when your family members are going to know that you're in Jamaica or you're in Trinidad or you're in Mexico because they don't necessarily tell.
Okay, so we realize that someone's citizenship can be denounced for various reasons. Say somebody who have been in the US worked many years in the system, but at the end they realize either the way they have obtained their citizenship, they had probably defraud something, something was wrong. This person, would they be what I say now, still allowed to have their benefits like their social security, all this will be taken
No.
away?
So this is the other thing. Once you're deported, you will likely lose your social security benefit because you have to be in status to get it. So, for example, let's say you decided to just go back to Jamaica to live and you've stayed out there for 5, 6 years, didn't come back here, didn't file any taxes, didn't do anything. Um, the laws may not afford you those social security benefit anymore because for the certain period of time you have not contributed into the system. And I know that green card holders who went to Jamaica and have lost their green card because they stayed out longer than a year have also lost their ability to get paid from the Social Security benefits that they had. And you have to remember that to get Social Security, you have to show that you have those 10 fortnights, those 10 fortnights of credits, giving you 40 credits with Social Security in order to be eligible for the benefits. Some people will have like 38 and they go back and now they can't get anything. Whereas if they had just stayed here and worked another 2 years, they would have been able to get their benefit. So everyone should, especially if you're over 50, you should really look at your Social Security statement to see what your benefits would look like, when you're eligible for it, and how far, how many more credit hours you need to be working and paying into Social Security to be eligible for the retirement benefit at the end when you stop working. This is why a lot of people stop working and they have no money. You also have the people who work here and they've been working under the table forever, meaning they don't contribute to taxes or Social Security. Those people will not get Social Security benefit even if they remain here in the United States, even if they have a green card, even if they're a citizen and they never contributed into to Social Security, they're not going to be able to get the Social Security retirement benefit. You have to have paid into it. But if you're out of status and you're out stuck in a foreign country, you can't come back unless somebody's going to refile for you. Chances are you won't be able to get your Social Security money. Is
All
that
right,
what you were
next one.
asking?
Yeah, you did. And right back on the same conversation. Suppose somebody is a green card holder but did not take on the citizenship. Are they qualified to get that social security benefit if they're just
Yeah,
green
but
card holder? But
green card holders can get their Social Security benefit because they would have worked and paid into it, right? But you have to make sure you work enough to contribute into it because you have to have a certain amount of hours per your job credit, per year credit, that adds into your eligibility for Social Security benefits. So every year, everyone supposedly would have gotten a Social Security summary mailed to them sometime near to their birthday. If not, you could go into the Social Security Administration portal, sign in, log in, create a username, password, get in there, and be able to look at your Social Security benefits. That letter will explain to you when you can retire, how much you would get, and when, at what age, things like that. That's important information you need to have.
okay, Tanya, I know you have been on here almost an hour. So what we're gonna do, we know you've been in this business of, the- guys, I'd say go back to the beginning of this video to know various areas that Tanya probably could represent you in based on what's going on. Tanya, I don't know if you want to share any information regarding just in case somebody is facing any of these challenges that we discussed, how they could get to you and things that as Jamaican, Caribbean people are just people who are under the radar, what they need to know, the must knows, and how they get to you if they need
All
your help.
right. So if you need my help, you could always go at tdormanlaw.com. That's the website, tdormanlaw.com. Or you could call our office in Hartford, Connecticut, 860-524-1862. It's a Dorman law firm. We've been doing this for a very long time. I spent over 12 years doing complex immigration litigation in court, before the Board of Immigration Appeals, before U.S. District Court, and the circuit courts. Third and Second Circuit is Massachusetts and New York. They're the local appellate courts in this region, and 9 times out of 10, I've been able to sit in other courts in Georgia and different areas, pro hoc vice, with other attorneys that who are my colleagues, right? So we're able to help anybody with immigration problems anywhere in the world, any state, any contiguous territory. If something is happening with Jamaica with the embassy, we're able to help. But people have to remember, immigration takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. And so everyone right now should probably be saving up some my immigration rainy day money, because you never know when you're going to need to pay a fee for something or do something else to protect your status. Your status is very, very important right now. We have pro enforcement. I mean, when you look at the coverage we get from the media, where foreign nationals are being referred to as invaders and terrorists and just negative associations, right? It gives you a feeling that there's something about being an immigrant that's not as desired as we would like for it to be anymore. So we don't know what else is coming down the pipe, because every waking day there's a new change, a different law, somebody suffering from a different behavior by somebody who's working in some airport or immigration office somewhere. And not every immigration officer is doing bad stuff or exploiting the rights of humans. But from what we're hearing, it has been happening. So everyone has to be mindful not to be so eager to sign stuff, not to get stressed out if they hold you at an airport for 4 hours. Know your rights and stick to it. You have a right to an attorney, and you have a right to go in front of an immigration judge. You have a right to your status. You applied for that green card, you paid for it, you went through all of the processes, you interviewed for it. It is yours, and there's a process, a legal process by which that green card can be revoked. And it's generally through removal proceedings, or if you leave the country knowing that you have certain criminal convictions or certain type of background and history, then you know once you leave the United States and go outside, coming back in, you'll have a problem. As long as you know the rules, then you should know how to govern yourselves. And please take the time to investigate things on your own, educate yourself, read everything. We're in an environment now where social media has a lot. Don't necessarily believe everything you hear. Investigate and check things out a little bit more for yourself. And if you can't find the answers, get with an attorney who's reputable, and you could call your bar association. They have a list of lawyers who they think are, you know, worthy to refer folks to or have the integrity to give good, honest opinions, because there's a lot of fraudsters coming up. There are a lot of people who are representing to be lawyers to help people now, and they are not. So in every good, there's also a lot of bad. And in every bad, there is good. So everybody has to take the time to really check things out on their own. And if you can't get your questions answered, go see a professional who can help you.
All right, Tanya, thank you for that sharing with us there. I don't know if you have time to answer this question from our brother Wayne Cuff, a cricketer from States, played for the JDF. But here he throw in a question at you there. He say, how long will it take for us to get our citizenship?
I think you're frozen in. Hi, Wayne. 91, massive big up to you, sir. It's hard to say how long it will take to get an interview because they have retrogression, meaning uh, everything is slowed up a little bit. There's a lot of people waiting in the pipeline to be interviewed. What you need to make sure you do is go into the Department of State portal, the immigrant visa portal that tells you if your documents are good, if you're documentarily qualified for an interview, and just know that you may have to wait. I believe they have implemented another little box or little link in the portal there that you could go into there and log in to see your processing time, to have an idea as to how long you could wait for the visa, how long you'll have to wait to be interviewed. But it's very hard to say because different countries has different time frames, and everybody's luck is different. It's a matter of a waiting game. But it could take years, 2 years, 3 years, because of the backlogs. I hope that answers the question. And I think we've lost Ian. I'm not sure where he is in the grand scheme of things. But it's very important for everyone to really, pay attention, read everything, and don't decide on your own. If you're coming through the airport, they stop you and you don't understand what they're saying, tell them, I'm not signing anything. I don't understand. I need an attorney. They'll have to figure out what to do with you when you say that. And if it comes down to it, you have to be that person who's not afraid to be locked up to defend what is your rights. So I hope that answers the question. I'll take another question till Ian comes back if there is one. There he is. Ian, I just answered that question